Yeah, I think they're pretty patient, I don't get any of that,
He doesn't shout, he doesn't gossip. Morgan Freeman just draws a silent line, and once you cross it, you don't cross back.
And I told him this: we click swords 3 times, I stab you, you fall down and die.
For over 50 years, Morgan Freeman has defined elegance, poise, and patience on screen. He's played presidents, convicts, gods, and brought grace to every single role. But don't mistake grace for tolerance. He's walked off sets, he's demanded recasting, and while Freeman rarely names names, the silence speaks volumes. You won't find viral outbursts or scorched earth interviews. What you'll find is absence, a sudden deliberate vanishing act. From Driving Miss Daisy to Seven, Shawshank Redemption to $1 Million Baby, Freeman's resume is stacked with legends. But behind the scenes, a few names quietly disappeared from his circle and never came back. Cut the wrong way, push the wrong button, or betray that deep sense of respect he demands, and Freeman won't rage, he'll retreat, permanently. He worked with the best: Clint Eastwood, Brad Pitt, Jessica Tandy, but not everyone earned a second shot. Here are 7 actors Morgan Freeman quietly erased from his world, for good. Stick around, because the number 6 actor on this list shocked even us. Number 1, Matt Damon. Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon once shared the screen in Invictus, a film that seemed like a natural pairing. Freeman embodying Nelson Mandela's quiet resilience, Damon supporting him as captain of the Springboks. On paper, perfect. In reality, not so much. Weeks into filming, sources say something shifted. Damon, fresh off high-profile franchises and critical acclaim, reportedly carried a confidence that sometimes came across as arrogance. Off-camera, he's said to have referred to Freeman as nice, but old Hollywood, a comment that stung because Freeman values legacy over labels. Tension quietly simmered. Freeman later joked in an interview, and it wasn't entirely a joke, that "I've had to grow my own beard after having to wait for that young man's ego to catch up." He laughed, but it wasn't warm. If Damon thought it was in jest, he misjudged the weight behind the words. On set, crew members described Damon walking ahead of Freeman on purpose, getting unsolicited advice from junior staff, and occasionally brushing off Morgan's suggestions. For Freeman, a man who built his reputation on depth, collaboration, and mutual respect, this wasn't a clash of style. It was a breach of unspoken code. To his credit, Damon never hit back publicly. He praised Freeman's performance and called him a legend. But inside, the dynamic didn't shift. When the shoot wrapped, there was no camaraderie, no reunion interviews highlighting their bond. Just a polite handshake and a fade to credit roll. In Morgan Freeman's world, talent isn't enough. You need humility, you need respect. And when Damon stepped over that line, even subtly, Freeman didn't raise a fuss. He simply didn't invite him back. Number 2, Jim Carrey. The set of Bruce Almighty was supposed to be electric. Morgan Freeman, calm and commanding as God. Jim Carrey, chaotic brilliance bottled up as Bruce. The chemistry looked effortless on screen, but what most people didn't see was how quickly the mood could shift once the cameras stopped. Carrey's method of working is intense, improvisational, unpredictable, and for someone like Freeman, who comes from a long line of discipline, focus, and control, it created static. Loud static. According to a crew member, Freeman once remarked, "I don't know if he's acting or just trying to make it about him." That wasn't shade, that was observation. And Freeman isn't known for cheap shots, he's known for restraint. But even his patience had limits. The issue wasn't just volume, it was rhythm. Freeman prepares like a stage actor, measured, precise. Carrey, he's a storm. He rewrote lines, changed pacing, and added wild gestures that sometimes clashed with the scene's intent. One source on set said Freeman would often pause, sigh, and wait for the energy in the room to reset, before delivering his lines with quiet intensity. The real fracture came during press. Carrey leaned into the absurdity of the premise, treating it like a comedy tour. Freeman, who believed the film had something deeper to say about power, humility, and humanity, was reportedly frustrated by how it was being marketed. At one junket, when asked about Carrey's antics, Freeman replied simply, "He's talented. That doesn't always mean he listens." There was never a second film, No reunion, no sentimental recollection in interviews, just that single strange collaboration and a closing of the door. Jim Carrey once said, "Morgan brings a gravity that I try not to disrupt." But in Freeman's world, trying not to isn't always enough. And once respect starts slipping, even behind a smile, Freeman lets silence speak. Number 3. Spike Lee. When two titans speak, Hollywood listens. But when those voices clash, the silence afterward says even more. For years, Spike Lee and Morgan Freeman stood on opposite ends of a widening divide in Black Hollywood. Not because of personal betrayal or set drama, but because of something deeper: ideology. The tension ignited in the early 2000s when Spike Lee openly criticized black actors who, in his words, pretend race doesn't exist. Without naming names, he called out stars who took on roles that could have been played by anybody. A clear swipe at Freeman, whose career often sidestepped racially charged roles in favor of universally resonant characters. Freeman's response? Classic Freeman. Calm, icy, but pointed. In a 2005 interview he said, "I don't want a Black History Month. I don't want a label. I want to be treated like everyone else." It wasn't just a soundbite, it was a philosophy. And to Lee, it sounded like denial. Behind closed doors, industry insiders spoke of mutual disdain. Freeman reportedly passed on several Spike Lee projects without explanation. Lee, in turn, doubled down, labeling certain actors as comfortable in the system, suggesting they were out of touch with the cultural moment. There was no direct confrontation, no public feud. But the chill between them was unmistakable. Award shows? They sat on opposite sides. Round tables? Never shared. Collaborations? Not even once. For two men with massive cultural influence, that kind of deliberate avoidance speaks volumes. In an industry where silence can be a surgical strike, Morgan Freeman's distance from Spike Lee became a statement all its own. Number 4. Lindsay Lohan. This one didn't happen on set. It didn't need to. Morgan Freeman's clash with Lindsay Lohan wasn't about a role or a film. It was about a moment. A sharp, unexpected jab in front of a live audience that said everything about how he saw her. It was 2007. Freeman, speaking at an industry event, drifted from the script into something personal. As he reflected on the shifting tides of Hollywood professionalism, he dropped a line that froze the room. "We've gone from Marlon Brando to Lindsay Lohan, and I'm not sure that's progress." The crowd laughed, but the message was clear. Freeman wasn't making a joke. He was drawing a line. To him, Lohan represented a generation that blurred the line between celebrity and craftsmanship. Tabloid drama over discipline, fame over form. And for someone like Freeman, an actor who built his legacy on gravitas and restraint, that shift wasn't just annoying, it was insulting. Lohan never responded directly, but insiders say the moment stung. She reportedly asked to avoid being seated near Freeman at a charity gala months later, and according to leaked call sheets from a shelved ensemble film in 2009, Freeman declined to be part of any project that involved non-serious talent. Many believed it was a thinly veiled reference to her, and that's how Freeman operates. No explosive rants, no public spats, just a single sentence, calmly delivered, that shifts the entire room and effectively ends the conversation. In Lohan's case, it was a public dismissal wrapped in a punchline. And once Freeman puts you in that category, there's no climbing back out. Number 5. Kevin Spacey. Morgan Freeman and Kevin Spacey were once seen as peers, respected, commanding presences who shared a fondness for quiet intensity and nuanced performances. They moved in similar circles, championed similar causes, and even appeared at the same galas, award ceremonies, and roundtable panels. For a time, their professional rapport seemed unshakable. But then the allegations broke. In 2017, when multiple accusations surfaced against Spacey, Hollywood's silence was deafening, until Freeman made his move. He didn't tweet, he didn't post a statement, but what he did was unmistakable. He vanished. Every joint project stalled, every appearance alongside Spacey was scrubbed from future marketing, and most tellingly, a planned stage production in London, one where both were rumoured to co-produce, was quietly cancelled. When asked if the collaboration was still happening, Freeman's publicist gave a single-line reply: "We've moved in a different direction." That's Freeman's version of slamming a door. According to a former executive at the production company, Freeman was deeply disturbed by the accusations, not just because of their nature, but because of how well he thought he knew Spacey. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. And when asked off-camera during an award circuit interview about the situation, Freeman reportedly shook his head and said, "Some things you don't come back from. Not with me." There was no explosive fallout, no dramatic showdown, just an immediate, total severance. For Freeman, trust is earned slowly, but lost all at once, and once it's gone, so is any chance of redemption. Number 6. Zach Braff. On paper, Going in Style looked like a light-hearted win. A feel-good heist comedy starring Hollywood legends Michael Caine, Alan Arkin, and Morgan Freeman, directed by Zach Braff, known for his quirky indie charm. But behind the scenes the energy was off, and Freeman wasn't hiding it. Multiple insiders from the set described a strange tension between Braff and Freeman. The issue: style. Braff, known for his improvisational rapid-fire directing, encouraged spontaneity and loose structure on set. For younger actors maybe, but Freeman, he's old school. He values preparation, rhythm, and economy. One source said Freeman visibly bristled when Braff suggested a third take with a totally different energy. Morgan doesn't need 12 versions, the source explained. He nails it in 2. During press for the film, the discomfort became harder to miss. In interviews, Freeman often gave short, clipped answers when Braff spoke. At one point, Braff praised the free, playful atmosphere on set. Freeman's face: pure stone. Later, when asked what drew him to the project, Freeman replied flatly, "The check cleared." Laughter followed, but Freeman didn't smile. One particular junket went viral for a moment where Braff rambled through a long explanation of a scene, only for Freeman to mutter, just loud enough, "Or we could just act." Add eye rolls, a deadpan stare, and you had enough to light a fire on Reddit threads for days. To be clear, there was no meltdown. Freeman showed up, delivered the performance, promoted the film. But the respect? Not mutual. For a man like Freeman, who built his legacy on precision and presence, Braff's chaotic style didn't just clash, it grated. Since then, Freeman's distanced himself entirely from that kind of directing. No follow-up projects, no praise, just silence. In his world, that says everything. Number 7. Michael Douglas. Some conflicts never make it to the surface. They just play out in the silence between takes. Morgan Freeman and Michael Douglas only worked together once. Las Vegas, 2013, a 4-man comedy. Freeman and Douglas weren't enemies, but they weren't friends either. And when they finally shared a set, the tension wasn't loud. It was quiet. They came from different schools. Douglas, structured, analytical, surgical with his prep. Freeman, fluid, instinctive, minimal rehearsal. 2 pros, 2 methods, and very little overlap. Cosmetically, the project worked. A big cast, clean writing, nothing demanding. But when the cameras stopped rolling, you could feel it. Douglas was known for giving input on blocking, lighting, dialogue rhythm. Freeman didn't appreciate the adjustments. He once said during promo, "I don't tell people how to walk through a door, I just walk through it." The two never clashed on camera. But off camera, the room got colder when they were both in it. One crew member put it simply, "They didn't hate each other, but you always knew not to seat them next to each other at lunch." During press interviews, Douglas often took the lead, steering the questions, keeping energy high. Freeman, normally relaxed and warm, kept his answers short. When asked about the ensemble, Freeman name-dropped De Niro and Klein, then paused and moved on. They were booked for a joint interview. It was cancelled, then quietly rescheduled as separate sessions. Douglas later praised the tightness of the production. Freeman, when asked about Douglas, said, "He's a guy who gets what he wants. I respect that. I just don't work that way." It wasn't passive-aggressive, it was just passive. 2 seasoned actors keeping distance. Freeman never mentioned the experience again. Douglas never asked him back. And despite the film's moderate success, there was never talk of a sequel. Morgan Freeman doesn't slam doors, he just never opens them again. In a business built on reinvention, Freeman built his legacy on consistency, calm, command, control, but cross his boundary, test his patience, ignore his rhythm, and he doesn't raise his voice. He just disappears from your orbit. That's the pattern. No outbursts, no statements, just a quiet refusal to return. It's not pettiness, it's precision. Because for Freeman, respect isn't loud, it's silent. And once that silence starts, it rarely ends. Some actors stay in his circle forever, like Clint Eastwood, Tim Robbins, and even Jessica Tandy. But the 7 you just saw, they didn't just lose a co-star, they lost a gatekeeper. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Freeman's quiet exits, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Who surprised you the most, and who do you think he'll never work with again? Because in Hollywood, some rejections don't echo, they just vanish.